So finally, at long last, I get the video that I've been teasing for the longest time really this year. I'm sorry for the delay, but today, yeah, we're finally talking about the Buchardt A700 active loudspeaker. So as you can see with the A700 set up behind me, this is quite a tall, floor-standing loudspeaker. It is designed in Denmark. It is made in China, but then shipped directly from Buckhardt's Denmark warehouse to end users, to customers, which means you can't buy this in the shops, you can't audition this in the shops. If you want to try it before you finally fully commit, Buchardt give us a 45-day home trial. But you have to fork over the 6,000 euros to benefit from that trial, which I think is fair enough. And then if you don't like them for whatever reason, I think Buchardt take care of actually two-way shipping. This is also an active loudspeaker, which means there are amplifiers inside the loudspeaker to drive the multitude of drivers. We'll come to that in a moment. But because this is an active loudspeaker that sells for 6 grand, I think it's only reasonable that we conduct side-by-side comparisons to 2 of its main rivals that I still have here. And they are the KEF LS60 Wireless and the Dynaudio Focus 30. Now, if you think that the internal amplifiers in this active loudspeaker are just like those in the Dynaudio and the KEF, think again, because they're not. Because they are user serviceable / replaceable. So I think it's fantastic that Buchardt are really thinking about the longevity of these loudspeakers. And also, I think really the #1 complaint that I see in the comment section from, I guess, more traditional audiophiles, you know who you are, who worry about the longevity and the life performance, that's not even a term, but anyway, of the internal amplifiers. Moreover, we get a 4-year warranty on those internal amplifiers and a 10-year warranty on the drivers in the A700. Now, where the KEF and the Dynaudio return fire is on build quality, I think it's a cut above the Buchardts, not in any major way, in a minor way, apart from really, I think the KEF's industrial design is just incredible. And I wouldn't say that about the Buchardt. I think it's fine, it's good, it's okay, nothing to complain about, nothing to rave about. Let's talk about the drivers, because the first thing we notice about the A700 is that tiny tweeter. It's only 3/4 of an inch. It's a soft dome and it's surrounded by an enormous aluminium waveguide. Now, I would say that the A700's treble to me is a bit smoother and not quite as zingy as that which we hear from the LS60 Wireless. On the other hand, the LS60 Wireless, I think its phantom image that it draws between the loudspeakers has a crisper definition to it. And sticking with the tweeter, I think microdynamic contrasts are a little bit better than the LS60 Wireless. Now, we need to talk about the bigger mid-bass drivers, right? There are 3 on the front and 2 on the back. And in its default form, we'll come to why I call it default form later, in its default form, this is a 3.5-way loudspeaker. So that means on the front of the loudspeaker, you've got 3 drivers, right? The top one just does mid-range. And then the other 2 do mid-bass, and then bass, and then sub-bass. And then the 2 on the back just take care of sub-bass only. So in case you're wondering, in case you're in any doubt, you absolutely do not need a subwoofer with the A700. Not at all. But this 3.5-way configuration makes the Buchardt A700 sound a very, very physical, robust, muscular loudspeaker, much closer to the LS60 Wireless than the more polite Focus 30. Although when it comes to the mid-range, I do think that the LS60 Wireless have the edge, just slightly, audiophile difference, just slightly with vocal definition, especially male vocals. But I think there's a more informative comparison to be made between the A700 and the Focus 30. So if we talk about the Dynaudio for a moment, I think they're better with the finer detail extraction, and also maybe ever so slightly better with delivering the dynamics, the microdynamics of those finer details. And I think imaging, so where players sit on this sort of phantom center soundstage, is more pinpoint accurate at the hands of the Focus 30 than it is the Buchardt. And I would say that the Dynaudios are really for people who like to think music, who get a lot of cerebral pleasure from music. So maybe if you really like to hear the pluck of an acoustic guitar, or hear the texture of a bow on the string of a violin, if you get off on those things, then I think that the Dynaudio will serve you better. But the Buchardt are the better of the two, I think by far, in communicating the physicality of music. No, it's kind of demonstrable presence in the room. And not just in bass depth or bass reach, but in macro dynamic muscularity. And I think the Bucharts in that sense are more for people who like to feel music, like to feel it hit their body. And I think that better handling of the physicality of sound crosses over into when we're watching TV and movies. I think the Bucharts are much better suited to the home theatre experience. To me, they are much more exciting to listen to when watching like an action movie. So I think they're better at kind of creating the excitement more than the more polite Focus 30. And besides, the Focus 30 don't have an HDMI input on the back. And to that end, I think the A700 is an exceptionally well balanced speaker. Now, when I say that, it doesn't mean the same thing as when other people say that. Now, what I mean is it's the right balance of lean forward excitement and then sort of lean back repose, as in you're kind of just, soaking in the sound or the atmosphere of the music or whatever it is you're watching on TV. Now, that is important for me as a music listener when playing something like Echo and the Bunnymen's Evergreen, which has just received a 25th anniversary double CD reissue. Now the new master still sounds a little bit thin and a little bit edgy, but thankfully the Buchardt tame that kind of thinness that the Focus 30 really don't. They kind of almost accentuate it, which is not a bad thing if you're after like supreme accuracy. But anyway, I think the Buchardt's handling of the top end is more agreeable to my taste because it's a pretty average recording, and the Buchardt also flesh out the bottom a little bit more, which this recording really needs it. But equally, if I play something like this amazing DJ mix CD from two of my favourite electronic music artists of all time, Jimmy Van M and Oliver Lieb, it's called Collaborations. I think it came out on Bedrock Records in about 2012. Now what I want from that is a very insistent techno throb, as it builds and builds and builds, because it's a slow burn listen. And what I don't want is something that underplays that really low bass, especially at lower volumes. And the Buchardt do an excellent job of letting me listen at low volumes because they have Fletcher Munson correction. So when you turn the volume down on the Buchardt speakers, what they do inside the DSP is lift the bass a little bit and lift the treble a little bit to compensate for the loss of sensitivity in our hearing as volume comes down. So that for me is a real win when listening to electronic music late at night when I don't want to disturb my neighbour. She's very, very understanding at the best of times, but late at night is an absolute no-no. So if I want to play that Jimmy Van M and Oliver Lieb CD at 2 in the morning, which is almost never these days, but maybe at midnight, I can do it at a lower volume with the A700, no problem. And I don't have to worry about, am I missing out on some element of the sound? Now, don't get me wrong, I don't feel that way when I'm listening to the KEFs or the Focus 30, but those speakers are more likely, very slightly, to wash out at the lowest volumes where the Buchardts won't. want measurements of these loudspeakers? Because I don't have them, but there are a metric ton of them on the Buchardt website. That's where you go if you want measurements of these loudspeakers. In their, I think it's in one of their operational modes, because that's the thing. These loudspeakers don't just have one personality, they have multiple personalities. They can sound, yeah, they can sound any way you want them to sound, pretty much. So when you buy the A700, I recommend you also buy the little Platin Hub. They do a bundle deal. Now what the Platin Hub does is talk to the loudspeakers wirelessly using something called WISA or WISA. So the stream comes from the cloud or from your NAS or whatever into the little Platin Hub. The Platin Hub then sends that stream out to the left and right speakers independently, but obviously fully in sync. Now that Platin Hub does Spotify Connect, AirPlay, it does Bluetooth, it does Google Chromecast. Now where it falls short in terms of streaming functionality with the KEF and the Dynaudio is that there is no Tidal Connect here. So if you want that, the Platin Hub isn't going to do it for you. It's also worth mentioning that the Platin Hub is a third-party product. So Buchardt don't make it, they buy it and they have the app that comes with it branded. The app is a control app. And I really think, to be fair to the app designers that work very hard at Dynaudio and KEF, the app that comes with the Platin Hub looks like it was designed by a 12-year-old. It's basic. It works, but it's not a joy to use as the KEF and the Dynaudio apps are. I'm sorry to say it. There is room correction built into the app. It's iOS only because the app needs to know what microphone it's talking to, and obviously Android phones, there's a multitude of microphones out there. But with iPhones, and only iPhones, not iPads, iPhones, there are, what, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. And Mads Buchardt, when I spoke to him a few days ago, did tell me that the microphones on iPhones are getting worse and worse with each generation. And that is compromising the phone's ability to execute the room correction properly. Because I'd phoned Mads because I'd used my iPhone 13 mini, push start, the speakers play white noise thanks to the Platin Hub. You sort of wave it around the room while staying a reasonable distance from the loudspeakers. I think you do it for 1 minute or 2 minutes. And what that does is the app, and therefore the Platin Hub, reads the result and then introduces a correction curve. But I did this 3 times. And the Platin Hub and the app insisted that I had this huge bass suck out, which I don't have. And Dirac has never shown me, neither has Room EQ Wizard. So clearly there's something going wrong there. So I tried to test the room correction. I didn't get a good result, so I didn't use it. But one thing I did find that the Platin Hub app is very useful for is configuring the left and right channels of my loudspeakers, because you have to pair them over WISA to the hub itself. And I had an issue where both speakers insisted on being the left channel. So in firing up the app, I could drag one of them and tell it was the right channel. However, the Platin Hub has one feature, one key feature that I think is essential nowadays on speakers of this stripe, and that is an HDMI ARC input. So you connect your TV to the hub, and then the hub sends the sound out via WISA wirelessly to each loudspeaker. No, there is no lip sync problem that I could see. It was just flawless. I watch the TV, I hear the sound, and don't think that anything is amiss. There's no sort of flappy lip. I think that's what the professionals call it when they're looking for lip sync problems. Flappy lip, is that right? That sounds awful, doesn't it? Now, obviously, with the Platin Hub being a digital streaming device, it means that the line level analog input will be encoded to digital by an ADC upon entry. But if you think that ADC somehow homogenizes or will tarnish the sound of your precious turntable, think again. Because I connected 2 different phono preamplifiers to the Platin Hub last week, and I could easily hear the differences between those 2 phono preamps. But if we look at the back of each Buchardt A700, we see a balanced XLR socket. And that's something we don't get on the back of the Focus 30 from Dynaudio or the LS60 Wireless from KEF. Now, I introduced a Cambridge Audio Edge NQ streaming preamplifier and used that to send an analog signal into the Buchardt A700. If you think that the ADC that greets each of those balanced XLR inputs on the back of the speakers will somehow eliminate or tarnish the sound of your precious preamplifier, think again. Because prior to putting the Cambridge in, I had the Schiit Audio Freya in the chain. And then when I stepped up to the Cambridge Audio, it was a big step up in sound quality. Big step up in price too, but I could notice the difference, right? Even though there's an analog to digital converter dealing with the signal as it comes into the A700. But whether we choose to feed the A700 from an external pre or from the Platin Hub, we still have access to what I think is this loudspeaker's killer feature. And it's called master tunings. And what that really is it gives us a way to change the DSP code inside the speaker, which therefore changes the crossover slopes and the driver array configuration, the frequency response to those drivers as executed by Buchardt. So on Buchardt's website, there are like, 8 or 9, maybe 10 different files that we can download. You copy one onto a USB key, you insert that USB key into the back of the loudspeaker, power cycle the loudspeaker, and then that new master tuning will be installed. You have to do it twice, obviously one for each speaker. So there is a master tuning called the 3-way cardioid. Notice 3-way, not 3.5-way. So the driver configuration has been changed. So what we get is we get one driver on the front doing mid-range. The other 2 are just doing bass. And then the 2 on the back are just handling the cardioid cancellation. If you don't know what cardioid dispersion is, I'll put a link in the description box below for you to read up on that. Now this is really useful if you are forced to put the loudspeaker very close to the front wall. When I tried it here with the speakers about 70 centimeters from the front wall, the first thing I thought was, oh my God, where did all the bass go? Now, I think Mads Buchardt has heard this complaint, this grumble, many times, because also on the master tunings page of the Buchardt website is a master tuning download file called cardioid with more bass, and it puts some of the bass back, which I think is great. So you still get a cardioid dispersion, but with more bass. Now, when I spoke to Mads on the phone, he said, yeah, on the graph, it looks insane. It looks like you get way too much bass, but listening in the room, no, it's just the right amount. And that cardioid with more bass master tuning takes the A700 for me closer to the KEF LS60 Wireless's crisper handling of male voices. And I noticed that when playing Digital Ash in the Digital Urn by Bright Eyes. Absolutely wonderful album from the mid-2000s. But equally, the extra details master tuning takes the sound of the A700 closer to that of the Focus 30 from Dynaudio. So more of a sort of top-end sparkle or clarity or extension. And that for me brings the best out of a new track, which I think is a collaboration between Alva Noto and Martin Gore from Depeche Mode. And it's a cover version of Bowie's Subterraneans. It's wonderful. So I want all that sort of like top end sprinkle and sparkle from that track. And that particular master tuning gives me that if I want it. I mean, really it is most sparkly and most sprinkly from the Focus 30. Now, personally speaking, I like the warm master tuning the most because I think that is the most impactful but also the most forgiving of the sort of new wave and crunchy guitar music that I've been listening to, especially lows when I go deaf. But also I've been playing the greatest album of all time a lot recently, and that is McCluskey Do Dallas. This is Welsh punk rock, proto-punk, I don't know what you call it really. It's a fairly aggressive guitar record with shouty vocals, and I bloody love it. So yeah, when playing this, I prefer the warm master tuning on the Buchardt just to take the edge off the top. But I think that's really what I love about the master tunings and these loudspeakers, is it gives us flexibility, but not too much. You know, like when you're given the blank slate of a parametric EQ, you're like, I don't know what to do, or what. Yeah, I could probably move this and move that, but does it sound any better? I don't know. What I like about the master tunings is that the DSP coders and loudspeaker crossover designers at Buchardt Audio, they design, what, 9, 10, maybe more eventually, different things that we can try out with our music to see which one we like the best, also with our room. And the master tunings give us choices, and choices are what tweakers like, right? Hi-fi tweakers who love to change this setting and change that component, that cable, that dongle, right? You can't do any of that because the amps are built in. So the master tunings give tweakers something to play with. But if you think you can build a separate system, so passive speakers, outboard amp, outboard DAC, outboard streamer, but with HDMI connectivity and master tunings flexibility, if you think you can build all of that for $6,000 yourself, compile it from third-party components, all the best to you. Because I don't think you'll do it. And also, let's not forget that the A700 and also the Focus 30 and also the LS60 Wireless, they are complete hi-fi systems in a box. 2 loudspeakers, plug them in, off you go. Now, admittedly, this one has the hub, but the hub's like this big. It's not a major intrusion, and it can be tucked away out of sight. But where I think the separatists who think they can do it themselves with separate components will come unstuck is on pricing. Because yes, these loudspeakers sell for $6,000, it's a lot of money. But Mads Buchardt has told me that if these were to sell through a traditional distributor, retailer channel, they might go for like $9,000 or $10,000. So really, it's kind of an unfair comparison that I've conducted today between the KEF and the Dynaudio that do sell through retail channels, because really what they're being stacked up against is a $9,000 or $10,000 speaker effectively. And while I'm talking about the Dynaudio, many of you will be thinking, yeah, John, but the Focus 50 is really the proper rival for the A700. That's the bigger floor stander from Dynaudio, the streaming active. I don't have that loudspeaker, so I can't tell you how it compares. Got no idea. But also the Focus 50, I think, is 10,500 or something like that, roughly 10 grand euros. So it's quite a bit more expensive than Buchardt's $6,000. So I think really the A700 is possibly the sweet spot of streaming active loudspeakers at this sort of $6-7 price point, if industry leading industrial design is not top of your priority list. As we've said before in a recent video, the looks of loudspeakers matter. I think that I prefer the look of the Dynaudio and the KEF more than the Buchardts. But it's not that I prefer the sound of these Buchardts more than the KEF and more than Dynaudio, not at all. It's just that I can change the sound with the master tunings. That for me is the real clincher as to why I think these would be my pick long term, because it gives me the flexibility, the tweakability that you can get that from the Dynaudio Focus 30 through Dirac room correction. And I think that's a very tidy all-in-one solution. But yeah, I think the Buchardts are more of an audiophile, traditionalist friendly kind of streaming active loudspeaker. God, I'm really rambling again. I've got to draw this video to a close. Look, that's all I have to say about the Buchardt A700. I hope you found it informative, enjoyable, or a bit of both. If you did, please consider clicking the like button down below. If you like my attitude towards high-end audio that factors in lots of streaming active loudspeakers, and certainly has this year, then please consider subscribing to this channel. And Well, yeah, and as always, thank you for watching, but this is the last video, the last review video for this year. When we come back, things are going to be a little bit different. So, finally, today, at last, I don't know what causes that, you know. For me, they're much better in, yeah, just communicating action sequences in, and I think that extra fix, if industry leading, this is the strongest coffee I've had for a long time.